Alrighty, hello folks, thank you for waiting a second there. And yes, hello there, Mr. Javelin, fine timing for you to be here. Hopefully gonna remember here. I basically just had a thing where, I was just kind of issuing a challenge to myself here that if I can at least get past the student pilot here, with just the marksman rifles, then I'll consider this one viable enough to be able to kind of grunt through, you know? So, let's go ahead and explain this challenge here a little bit while folks show up. First and foremost, is that annoying choppy sound still there? Let's see. By the way, I'm getting the game next month from Steam, so expect to see me back out there soon. I can't wait! I can't wait! Unfortunately, unlike AC5, I haven't seen an AI mode for this yet. That's one of those things that I hope if they decide to, you know, do the whole DLC route, which personally I think that they would just have an absolute slam dunk if they decided to go do like a bunch of extra story routes for DLC and just go full Last Raven with it. But yeah, either way, this game is absolutely incredible. I think you're gonna love it. So there's that. And by the way, one playthrough does not even remotely come close to giving you the full experience. Like, when they joke that you gotta do all 3 playthroughs to get it, this whole thing all comes full circle by the 3rd playthrough. It is wild. But yeah, I would absolutely be happy to find a way to pay out the nose for DLC for this one. It's just a really dang fun experience. It's like basically from start to finish, it is exactly the most AC game that ever needed to be. Like, they've had that feature of the AI mode that they've brought back every time that they were feeling particularly confident. Like, by the time they finished off 1st gen, they're like, oh yeah, Master of Arena gets some AI mode. 2nd gen, they didn't seem to be as confident about, since they basically just did 2, and then they did another Age, and they're like, well, maybe somebody bought this somewhere. Although I do remember that Another Age supposedly still has one of the most like long-lasting multiplayer scenes, and I think AC2 potentially outsold many of the previous ones. But like, for some reason, I always got the vibe that there wasn't really a whole lot of confidence in 2nd gen. Maybe it was something to do with the engine and a lot of the weird quirks of it. But when 3rd gen rolled around, I mean, hell, they had the AI that they felt confident enough to roll around for Silent Mind. Then they decided to experiment around with just kind of doing the whole AI arena, just like randomized arena for Ninebreaker. Then they finally just made Formula Front. Just decided, screw it, let's make it a sport. I mean, hell, if they released Formula Front with an online mode with that 5v5 thing, would gladly pay just like full price for that thing just as a direct port. That game is amazing. Nowhere near the due that it deserved. Let's see. I played it elsewhere for the time being. It's so damn well made. Oh yeah, it is incredibly well made. I mean, I will say for by the way, as far as that other AI thing, it's funny how the last time they felt super confident in the AI was Verdict Day, and they had such a crazy deep system for that one, and then just like nobody used it outside of griefing people online. Those freaking UNAC killbots were just a nightmare. I mean, you could easily replace most of the boss fights with just random people with Japanese names. It was always just some finely tuned death machine that you stood no chance against. It's like, you'd be lucky if you caught a glimpse of them before you just got insta-deleted from across the map by just something you couldn't possibly perceive. Like, forget pulverizers. Japanese players on Armored Core Verdict Day. That was the scariest thing in the franchise. Actually, recently, I was trying to go through trying to get Verdict Day working on the Steam Deck. Currently, I know it's possible. Currently, I mean, from what tinkering I could do last night while waiting for work to show up, it still runs about as well as a brick, kind of a brick in a desert, but still, there's a lot of tweaking to do, I'm sure. Alright, let's see. If they made the AIAC with independent programming with multiple options from missions to arenas, that'd be a massive hit. Yeah, I mean, it'd be pretty cool to, for example, just make the Chatty DLC. I know you probably don't know who Chatty is. There's literally an AI character in this one where they specifically mentioned that that is a thing that's possible in universe, so it'd be pretty cool if they just made the Chatty DLC. Okay. So what's the minimum NVIDIA generation VGA required to play this game on low graphics properly? I have no frickin' clue. I have stock out-of-the-box Steam Deck. That is my experience. So anyway, okay, let me explain the very rusty Taurus run real quick here. So this is essentially this is a ng++ file, so we will have options like different options and missions and whatever. But basically, I wanted to do this on New Game++ with some of the extra stuff that was thrown in there, and additionally, the frame that we're going to be running is going to be the jailbreak frame. So the jailbreak is essentially like partway through the game. There is a mission where you are forced to more or less play the entire mission as garbage. So the weapons are going to change. I just put 3 things that you have available right from the very start here. But I figured the AC that I always did the manual fire only challenges with was pretty much entirely designed to be garbage, and this time they literally have an AC frame that is made of garbage. So I was like, yes, finally you can play as an MT, because this is basically a worker AC that has like rusted and been pulled out of a junk heap. So if you've played 5th gen, you liked Flamefly, that is canonically a thing that you can be now. So anyway, that's pretty freaking wonderful. Anyway, for the first couple of missions, like the primary weapons I plan to use for most of this are what I like to call the marksman rifles. So that's these Rensetsus over here. They're basically semi-auto rifles with a burst fire mode, but they feel very similar to 3rd gen small rockets to me. That's why I like using them for this. The trajectory of their shots is very intuitive. One of the big challenges that comes from these manual fire runs is being able to correctly kind of understand the trajectory of the shots, which, for example, with the machine guns, it is ridiculous to try and hit anything that's moving with a machine gun in manual fire in this. The shotguns depends on which shotgun. Like you may have noticed, I specifically have not gone and picked up the Zimmermans. We're gonna attempt to ignore that the Zimmermans exist. Something like the pistols are absolutely tragic to try to use in manual fire because their shots are surprisingly slow. But basically, anything with a somewhat understandable trajectory is going to be fairly handy. There were times that I was testing out the bazookas, and they can work. It's just like complete prediction shots exclusively with these things. So it's just basically you predict the vague location that somebody's going to be and hope that the shot lands. A lot of these manual fire kind of challenges, as I've done them over the years, have been that exact thing of just kind of figuring out patterns and then attempting to land those shots. So as far as rules go, there are certain bosses that move freakishly fast, so my assumption is that we'll like down the road I'm leaving a bit of an opening for if we need to change the generator and booster combination. I'm leaving that open to whatever's available at the time. I'm going to try to stick with the default stuff as much as possible, and then finally the weapons that can be used are just going to be whatever's available at that time. So basically, I have a rough sketch of where stuff's available. I can just pull up the wiki for when stuff's unlocked to figure out the rest. But for most of it, I'm just going to be using those marksman rifles or those basic bazookas. Bear in mind that there's very little that this setup can actually do build-wise, because if you're thinking like, oh, just dual laser pistols, that seems pretty useful. It can't actually run dual laser pistols. And actually, before I forget, speaking of things that it can't do, let's go ahead and reset the OS tuning so that we don't have all of our upgrades. The upgrades, since you get new arena unlocks with every chapter, for every chapter completed, I'm going to try and look up the prices for those upgrades. That being said, the boost kick is the cheapest, or not the boost kick, sorry, the manual aim is the second cheapest thing that you can get. It's funny how the most powerful thing in this entire thing is the boost kick, and it starts off as 1. But anyways, manual aiming starts off at 2, so we're just kind of going to discount that from the future, because you have to pay to make your AC suck more. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started here. That's why it was a New Game Plus file. So you start off with 2 missions here. Both are fairly easy. You don't have any additional weapons outside of your missiles and blade at this point. I'm not allowing any blade attacks, just because, frankly, it would just turn into the best possible option. Actually, let's just redo that briefing real quick. It would just turn into the best possible option. Bar none, since those melee attacks are just really good at staggering things, really good at dealing damage, and overall, considering that we're going to be in a pretty compromised situation anyway. Actually, you know what, screw it, we're just going to skip these, because realistically, this literally just says go forth and blow shit up, and That's about it. I'm going to skip some of these early intros. I'm mostly in this one for just the challenge to see how much we can actually do at this point, not necessarily to get all the story stuff, because that's not really going to apply too much here. So yeah, now that I think about it, if I'm in New Game Plus Plus mode, when you do... Okay, I think you specifically have to follow the right chain to reach alternate choral convergence, so I don't think we're going to run into an issue of being locked into the wrong missions. If we get stuck into the New Game Plus Plus route, I'm just going to do mission replays. But yeah, we're just going to play that part by ear. We'll see how it goes. Also, hang on, let me move some stuff real quick. Namely, hang on. Hold on. Don't do that. One quick second. Sorry, it's switching over to mouse controls because I'm trying to move the window, and it is being very upset about that right now. There we go. We move that over here. We move the chat over here. I know you won't be able to see chat in the replay here. I apologize for that. It refuses to stay on top of the window. Anyway. Alright, so, let's see. I've been searching it out. Steam GPU has the same capability as an NVIDIA. I guess it's not really that heavy. I mean, yeah, it doesn't feel that heavy, and this is able to run it pretty comfortably. It's been noted as being pretty well optimized, and all of that. Alright, so, let's explain this manual fire situation here. So basically, you hold down your right thumbstick to activate manual fire mode. This is part of the reason that we won't be able to use missiles. You cannot dumbfire missiles. They will still remain tracking even in this mode. So basically, we just won't be able to use them whatsoever. And for the most part, I'm just looking to just get past the missions and survive them, not necessarily to go for any extra objectives, unless we're feeling particularly confident. So we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah. Every weapon has a different kind of trajectory, and the actual reticle on this thing is pretty weird. So there are other bits of tech that we'll be able to use as we carry along. Alright, I'm just going to pop these guys real quick. These starting rifles, by the way, the reason that we're not going to be sticking with the starting rifle is because of this recoil. One of the interesting quirks about this frame is that its recoil control and firearm specialization basically don't exist. So this thing cannot aim worth a crap. It also cannot deal with recoil worth a crap. This is why we're primarily going to be working with single-shot weapons. It seemed like the perfect frame for this. Also, there's a lot of enemies, like these guys over here, that you mostly can only damage from the front. Let's go ahead and mid-air reload this thing. We will be making extensive use of manual reloads to not run into reloading cycles, since that's a thing that you can do in this one, or at least a thing you can do by default and you're actually recommended to do in this one. For some cases, like with a starting rifle, because of the constant recoil issues, I'm just going to stick with walking in some instances. Basically, the reason that I like those marksman rifles and bazookas for this one is just because it doesn't scatter. Like, it will be vaguely in the right direction of where you're trying to aim if you fire two marksman rifles at the same time. In this case, it's just kind of spray and pray until I get until I get my rifles. Because the starting rifle is okay on the frame that you get it, but in this thing, it is trash. Also, we'll also be making extensive use of the one-shot protection armor later on. One of the upgrades that you can get, probably the main upgrade I'm going to buy as soon as the first upgrades are available, is going to be the terminal armor, which basically means that you can't be one-shot. It's not necessarily always that useful, but in this particular instance it will be. Since this AC has dramatically lower AP than would normally be just allowed by the game, quite frankly. Normally 8,000 or 9,000 is what you'd see on a lightweight. This thing caps out at a whopping 6,400. So there's that. It has crappy defense, it has crappy armor, it has terrible stability. It is just exactly what it says on the box. It's a frickin' MT, more or less, at least in this advanced version. There we go. And now with this mission done with Grid 1... Actually, no, it's Grid 135 cleanup that'll get us our proper weapon. You can also run into stuff and punch stuff in this particular thing. So punches, I'm going to allow... kicks, I'm going to allow. The shoulder bash, I'm going to allow, just because there will be cases where it will be frankly necessary just to get stuff done, like right here for this next mission. Because of the scatter on this rifle, it's realistically just kind of hoping to land the shots, so when it comes to helicopters anyway. So, anyway, let's go ahead and get this done. How long it took you to beat Baltius? Took, I want to say it was like 3 or 4 attempts at first before I got interrupted, and then I came back the next day and it was like second attempt, something like that. I have the video up. But yeah, and to be fair, it probably could have been sooner than that. Like, immediately upon seeing the thing, I remember reading the description on the pulse machine guns. I'm like, oh, this seems like it would hard counter this guy. And I had shown up there with my laser halberd and pistol and, you know, little micro swarmers. I was like, I refusing to use the boost kick because I didn't know how you were supposed to do it. I think I don't even remember if I unlocked it. But I know ever since going back, I've managed to get the guy every dang time. But it's just interesting that he's a boss that teaches you so many mechanics at one time. Like, if you figured out how to use the boost kick, if you figured out to bring a pulse weapon with you, the guy's just a pushover. But man, if you're doing it just on boss mechanics alone, what a freaking boss fight! That guy's awesome. Oh shoot! Hang on, hold on. Restart. We can't be locking on to stuff. That is one thing that I wish that you could permanently set it to manual fire. Because it does start you off in lock-on mode. You have to specifically tell it to not do that. And you can know if it's lock-on mode. So for those that don't know, for those that haven't played it, here's how it works. This is, this is standard lock, where it's just the circle with the 2 bars. This is a focus lock, or aim assist, where it has the kind of grids on the outside. And manual fire is this thing with those lines letting you know how useless this mode is on a regular practical basis. There was a guy that was using ECM jammers when playing online. I had several massive grenade cannons and have years of experience playing manual fire runs in an Armored Core game. It still did next to nothing in terms of being useful. Anyway, moving on. So this is what I mean about these helicopters, just so you can see. Like, the recoil on this thing is dog doo-doo. They can be right in the center of the reticle. I should also point out we're not doing mouse and keyboard for this. This has to be done on controller, just like with all the other ones. Though personally I find the controller version more convenient anyway. But yeah, the scatter on this rifle combined with the tiny hitbox on these things means that this is going to be, you know, a bit of a thing with those helicopters. Technically speaking, I think training mode unlocked at this point, so I probably should have allowed equipping a machine gun. Because once you can, like, as soon as you come back, you get access to at least the Ludlow, which at least gives some close-range damage and stuff like that for that guy with a shield up there. Anyway, I'm going to do this opposite from how I usually do it, because that guy's got the shield over there. And I just want to see what happens, because normally I go up the left side there and just go about it that way. But anyway, I'll just go ahead and circle past these guys' shields. I don't think hitting them on the other side of the shield necessarily does anything. That is to say, hitting them on the gun arm or whatever else, I think they're just completely protected from the front. You can ram them to inflict stability damage, though. As soon as something's stability damage breaks, most of the time their shields will break. So 2 rifles are more than enough to get the job done against these guys. This right here is just testing. How bad is this? Is this just going to keep ricocheting the whole time? Okay, his shield is overheated. He just dropped it. So shields have a proper break, and they have like an overheat situation. Normally, when you use your shield, they'll just overheat. In this particular instance, there we go. Just knock him out of his stability there. Thankfully, even despite being rusty as hell, this thing will be pretty solid for those. And oh yeah, you just saw that 4 helicopters hit hit it once. We'll pretend that was skillful. Just slowly Terminator walk our way forward here. This is why I'm not using the starting rifles. I would, if these arms could aim whatsoever, I would absolutely love to use the starting rifles just for the firing rate. Like, their range isn't bad, their damage is pretty alright. Their ammo capacity is pretty alright, but yeah, no. It's just pure spray and pray. Actually, I probably should have even... Did I mention equipping 2 of them, maybe? But yeah, we're just going to stick on the ground for the time being until I get my real rifles, so that I can actually aim at something. tap right into you.
Ember, turn through us.
Yeah, that's sad is the thing. There we go, let's pop him. Oh, and if you're wondering why I didn't just start a new game plus, or just start a regular new game file, I think I mentioned this earlier. You can't actually turn on manual fire until you get access to upgrades. So, yeah. Also, there's a little bit of delay. Like, if you remember the left arm delay in like 3rd gen and stuff like that, you have something similar to that whenever you're not facing the other guy. So that's kind of just something you got to deal with. Also, you aim a little bit lower than where the reticle is. It's more so an illusion, and I think partially it just might be a camera thing. But you actually aim a little bit lower than where it is. This is going to be particularly notable when we get to the student pilot. Like, this is one of the only times that anyone's ever going to really struggle with a guy past their first playthrough. Just because in his case, he has really good, really good shell defense, being a heavyweight with some of the best shell defense parts. And on top of that, he's in a place with a bunch of water, which tends to eat shots, so that's fun. Anyway, let's go ahead and get these shots lined up. There we go. Alright. Let's see, it took me 3 tries. I used the bazooka missiles and blade with linear rifle on the back. Play with mouse and keyboard. Makes sense. Makes sense. Like, anything, like, if you figure out how to break his stability and stuff like that, it definitely becomes a far easier fight. I know personally I just was really stubborn upon sticking with that, like, laser pistol and blade build, just because I was really happy to see my, my beloved, Souls Halberd showing up in an Armored Core game. Like, I freaking love the spin move. But anyways, like, you know, pretty much same reason I use the Hunter Axe all the way through Bloodborne. Like, it's just like, hey, sweet, my halberd's here. It's doing its same old thing it always does. Anyway, so that's a cool thing you can do too, by the way. In certain cases where there's enemies that are particularly... Hang on, accidentally switched firing modes there. That there are enemies that are particularly tough or whatever else, you can actually just kind of trick them into walking off cliffs, so that's fun. Again, a lot of, you know, classic FromSoft logic applies here. I'm just probably going to burn our repair kits to hit this guy. There we go, just walk slowly through the steam. Do the Terminator walk. Oh, this is great. But yeah, like, again, I love these starting rifles, but just, they're just plain suffering in the hands of this thing. Oh, by the way, also, for those that didn't know, this is basically a reverse of where you start off from. I just found it really cool that over here someplace, one of these spots off to the side, there's a hole that you shot through initially upon landing here. If you go back through there, there's a stealth mech in there that's checking out your crash site. It doesn't give you anything, but it's just cool that it's there. But yeah, Mr. Javelin. For the Baltius fight, I actually have the video of that on the channel. It's the 3rd video of the blind run. Alright, so now that those missions are done, that is our first shop upgrade, which means that I finally get my beloved rifles. So, we get 2 things from... Well, I'm going to be using these for the most part until we get up to the student pilot. Right before the student pilot, we also technically have access to these things. So this will be, like, this particular combo is technically allowed, but I won't really be focusing on it. We'll primarily be sticking with these rifles because, again, they will more or less be the starter setup, or they'll more or less be the equivalent of the manual fire setup from older generations and whatnot. Just the shot speed, the overall kind of trajectory of all of it, the size of the shots, it just feels very familiar, you know? That's a bazooka you used? Well, that is a good, trusty bazooka. Now, can anyone tell me, do you hear that, like, little tick, 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 tick kind of sound off in the background, or was that my headset acting up? Tactics Score 6, kind of. Yeah, I love this rifle. Like, this is just a very cozy rifle to use in my eyes. So, hang on. Let's turn on manual fire. So, 2 things are particularly handy about this thing. Well, 3 things, actually. It has that burst fire mode, which allows you to stop mid-air to fire, which means you can somewhat kind of lock in your shots. You can, like, if you manage to land the reticle exactly where it needs to be, then it can be pretty cozy. We can just do this little air hop thing. But you can also fire them both at the same time to be able to land your shots pretty accurately. So this feels very cozy. Do one manual reload right here. Let's go over this way. Again, expect that that student pilot is going to take us a bit of a hot minute. It's just going to be how it goes. Sometimes I'll fire one, sometimes I'll fire both. Just so you know that that's pretty much entirely going to be situational. There really is no, like, optimal DPS type situation. It's literally just going to be like, well, right now I'm expecting one to need a reload, I'm expecting one to not need a reload. The scatter shot is particularly handy in like those situations where you either need to just hit a roughly wide area and you're not sure what you're going to run into, or you know, potentially have a bigger target. Can you hear the chatter goes down when you're playing? Yeah, I don't know what that is, and I'm hoping it's not my mic acting up. It's one of two things, neither of which is ideal. Seem to be louder when you mention moving to a different window. See, that's part of what it is, though. There's three things that I think might be causing it. Originally, I thought it was our dehumidifier, but that thing, I changed the settings on that. It definitely isn't that. Okay, what was the other thing here? Sorry, lost, hang on, muting for just a sec. Okay, second thing would be if this mic is retiring, which I really hope it isn't. So I'm going to try adjusting a couple things here. It should still be in good condition. Actually, wait a minute. Hold on. I just noticed something. The two might be related. Did it just stop? Did the sound stop? Because we also switched to a different internet, because they got fiber here, and it wound up being like a third of the cost of what we were paying before. And I just noticed that my mic cord was actually running directly under the thing. I was thinking it was caused by it, maybe it was some interference or something. But I just noticed it was sitting on top of the cord. So that's a thing. Anyway, let me know if that fixed it. Hopefully it did. Also, technically speaking, I can also adjust the settings a little bit to be like so. Hopefully, maybe that did something too. Alright, so let's go ahead and get this thing started. So, alright, this is the first brick wall of the run. So this is the guy that specifically I was telling myself I wouldn't even try this run until I was able to beat this guy with these rifles without any additional upgrades, which is exactly what I did the other end. Let's see, sounds like interference, but did that improve it by any chance? Out of curiosity? Or is it still there? It's like this guy is basically a sample of our worst case scenario here. Well, second worst case scenario. See, speed is something you can learn to adjust for, but armor, not so much. Alright. Alright. So, interesting quirk about this. Unlike older AC games, let's see, can you switch your headset cable for something shielded? I put shielding on the cable is the thing. And also switched out to a grounded connection to deal with that, because this was an issue that I was dealing with a while ago, and that fixed it the first time around. Alright, so, weird quirk on this fight. We're going to adjust more of that audio in a moment. But weird quirk of this fight is that these high tracking missiles that he's got, we can't do anything about those, because he has an infinite amount of them. So this literally just becomes just kind of outlasting this guy all the way through. We have enough ammo and enough armor to be able to survive this guy's attacks, but if we end up getting hit by missiles or get bladed repeatedly, then this attempt is just screwed. Additionally, because of the water here, this means that there's going to be a few shots that if I aim slightly too low, they'll just get eaten. So as you saw right there, I aimed slightly lower, and those shots ended up just disappearing. Theoretically, it's possible to put him into a stagger, but dodging those missiles is going to be a constant thing. Not getting hit by that is a constant thing. So it's mostly these mid-range shots that end up landing. Yeah, like that was just a plain mistake right there. And best spot to hit him is primarily on those like curves that he does. Because you may notice there's also some like the shots are pretty consistent about where they go. I feel like there's a little bit more scatter than it says. Still kind of piecing all of that together. Like if he ends up going on a particularly nice curve, I might end up just doing one rifle and then another for better shot consistency. But this is one of the reasons that I wanted to do it on controller, because actually the reason I find this more comfortable on controller is because you can keep your shots more or less level whenever going side to side. On mouse, less so. Alright. So you try turning Bluetooth and Wi-Fi on the Steam Deck. They may be doing something. Let me check. Well, if I turn off Wi-Fi, then I don't have it on a wired connection right now. I actually should switch it to a wired connection, because I got that wire somewhere here. Okay, I think do I already have Bluetooth off? Because the settings aren't any different from when I originally didn't have it. Yeah, Bluetooth is already turned off. I don't know. Let's see. What else could be interfering with the connection? Because it feels like it's definitely microphone related. Try adjusting this a little bit. Let's see, we got this cord going over this way, going over this way. Maybe it's something to do with... One sec. See if this ends up sorting out the problem. Hang on, I'm muting it for just a sec. Alrighty, let's see how we're doing now. Back. Still got the missiles to dodge here. Oh, it's still there? Nah. Yeah, I know it's normally very faint. Usually I have it blocked out by background noise. That's why the shielding was enough to get it done the first time. Yeah, let me know if it's any better now. While we continue to do prediction shots over here. Alright. So this... Yeah, this particular attempt hasn't gone too amazingly. I mean, if... I have had cases where I've gotten multiple shots to land, like, consecutively enough to almost put him into a stagger, but I've never actually got him into a stagger with these rifles. Alright. And you can pretty much tell, like, these actual normal shots do next to nothing to them. You can somewhat do kind of predict shots with these, what's it? With the burst shots and stuff like that. But they're very... You're kind of committing a lot of movement there. Like right there, could kind of do it. You can actually still pivot while burst firing, so that's pretty useful there. But you're pretty much entirely locking yourself into the pivot there. Now, when I was doing this with prediction bazookas and stuff like that, it took way more off him, but it also just kind of locked you in a lot more. So when he's passing by, you can do the bursts more consistently. It's mostly the movement issue is mostly an issue because of those constant missiles. Like you saw right there, the hitboxes are pretty precise in this thing, and in fact there were a lot of people putting out like little gifs and whatever after the game released over how precise the hitboxes are. Of just like literally shots will go straight through joints and stuff like that because they're very, very detailed. But it leads to some really cool cinematic moments whenever it goes slow-mo and there's just like missiles being dodged by inches, you know? But either way. So that was definitely one of those crutches that helped out in early gens. Actually, still, like, if I can get Verdict Day and stuff like that running, I'd love to give that a bit of a try at some point too for this whole rule set. Yeah, he's never going to run out of ammo too, if you're thinking that's a strategy. See, now it sounds like a buzz, but it's low and not as annoying. Definitely changed a lot when you were adjusting the wires. Okay, then it was, yeah, it was a little kink in the wire then. Right. Decent amount of ammo left. Could be better, but oh well. You can kind of tell where a lot of the challenge on this one will come from. Like, it's funny, when we get to bosses and things like that, it ironically will probably be a lot more normal. It's literally just whenever there's AC fights that it's going to be the biggest issue. Because they're just these tiny little dinky targets, you know, comparatively speaking. Oh, shoot. That was just bad. But especially this guy on this map, just, oh, jeez. Like, trying to prediction shot from exactly the right range. A lot of your shots will just ricochet if they hit at the wrong range, especially with how high his armor is. Did he just break? Interesting. Like, you gotta watch out for ricochets. Not as much as in Verdict Day, mind you, but still. I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people that played 5th gen found this one so dang satisfying. I'm just like, man, it's so nice to not have to worry about going into a fight and having your weapons not work. Especially in multiplayer.
AP at 30%.
Yeah, this attempt is looking pretty scuffed right now. Right. Especially if he has that cut right there. Yeah, I've tried a few different, like, more convenient approaches to this particular one that didn't involve dodging the entire frickin' time. And if you're wondering, yes, I did try mouse and keyboard, and it was just more annoying, because you had to keep your hands stiff the entire time, and that just was all crampy-like. I mean, the overall mentality is still the same. You're just kind of prediction shotting where he's going to go. And whether or not he decides to go in that direction is entirely up to the computer, so, you know. Alright.
AP at 50%.
We had a pretty good line on him there for a second. And overall, obviously, there's going to be new stuff being learned and figured out for this run as we carry along, just like with every other time we did this.
30%.
It's just that idea of being able to dodge and hit at the same time. You know, it's a bit more exciting than usual.
Right hand ammunition at 30%.
And it's stressful, yeah. And, I mean, part of it is just, like, the angles involved here. Alright, whatever, this is basically scuffed, because we're just going to get whittled down by his rifle, even if everything else gets dodged.
Left hand ammunition at 30%.
Fire wildly! Yep. There's certainly an opening there to get some predicts off with those burst shots. But the idea is you gotta burn him out of those... Well, not burn him out, but you gotta dodge his missiles. Then you gotta find an opening where he's not above the water. Get the angle just right to get all those shots in. And then... Yeah. Yes, yes. Friggin' super high shell defense. I love the design of this guy, though, because he is exactly the same design mentality as just Onyx from Pokemon there. Because, like, they're really high defense, except if you end up breaking their defense, they go down like butter. You more or less get a chance to do the first hit. This is right as several mechanics are just being introduced to you. His whole thing is basically pressure, so like the burst rifles feel scary, but they're not that threatening. He's got the RLF rifle. He's got pursuit missiles that are very, very slow. So realistically, you should be able to dodge that, but it's giving you a nice little tutorial there. See, the biggest problem is how far the counter moves go. Like, I avoid the bazooka to the face when doing melee, but you get assault armored. Well, yeah, you gotta, like, you really gotta plan this stuff out. I mean, online especially, you just constantly gotta come up with new tricks. Like, there's so much tech in this one. I love it. And if you're ever wondering, like, why I randomly fired a wall, a lot of times, like, you can basically think of, like, okay, I need to move in this direction, I need to attack or dodge that move in that direction. I know that guy's going to be vaguely in that direction, and I know I've got, like, X amount of shots left, so therefore, you know, we're just going to take a shot over there, we're going to dodge at the same time, you know, going this way. Taking 2 shots at one time to hopefully give a wider area for those shots to hit, and then hope he goes in that direction. So like right there, it takes a decent enough chunk off when they hit. They're meaty enough to be a reasonable threat, and there's going to be certain situations when, you know, we can do like a 4-shot burst. But normally I won't be able to stop long enough to do that. Or like you saw right there where it ended up hitting him, but he had moved farther away, so the shot ricocheted off his armor. So, like, bazookas are really good for that, but they're also very, very slow for prediction shots. And it's not that they can't work. Like, I don't know how much of the text you can read, like, stream latency and whatever. It's not that it can't work. It certainly can. Like, when I was going and testing it, you know, had pretty decent results with bazookas, but I don't want to just rely on AoE damage the whole time. And these things, especially when it comes to ammo counts, these things are definitely going to be the most reliable. Because there's many situations where fights go on for quite a while. And if you're wondering, yes, I did try the punch method. And it could work, theoretically. It was enough to get him into a stagger. But I don't know if the heat buildup on these arms is different or what. But he actually would end up falling into a stun and then recover before the heat built up, or before the heat recovered, because you have a heat up mechanic on your arms. Darn, I was kind of hoping he would go the other way because he saw where I was shooting. As he shows up to his boss, like, you wouldn't believe it. You know how he said that nobody would possibly show up without an FCS? That's exactly what happened. Then he became, like, the longest-lasting Gun 13 ever. Yeah, if they make a DLC, the first thing I want to see is like the red guns route. I just want to see them win. Yeah, there we go. That was a pretty decent run on him. And if you ever see me stop firing and reload, that's... yeah, that should be self-explanatory. There's nothing more frustrating than getting into an optimal position and then your gun doesn't have bullets in it. And yeah, so we will be making extensive use of the boost kick once we end up getting it, but either way. And the reason that I'm allowing the boost kick and not the melee weapons, the melee weapons have a ridiculously wide arc to the point that you can use them just fine unlocked. The boost kick is very precise, and so it still takes a pretty decent amount of effort to not just be the thing that you're relying on all the time. Let's go forward on you. But you see what I mean about this guy was my personal source of dread whenever testing for this thing? Oh, there we go. That's a good spot. Just stay right there. But yeah, so by the way, Mr. Javelin, as far as the counter moves go, like what I've found over time is just it's interesting to see how every build can technically counter every other build just with creative use of said counter moves. Like one of the bosses, for example, I made this pulverizer AC that was entirely about those heavy hits and whatever, and then just noticed all of their stuff worked entirely different. Like normally it was a case of using its like 80 whatever shot missiles to be able to break posture, and then essentially use that to be able to go in with the laser lance to be able to finish the thing off, right? And so with that particular boss, it was having basically the missiles were never quite hitting enough to be that primary source of damage. Partway through the fight, just ended up switching over to using the laser lance as the posture breaker, switching over to the kicks and missiles as the primary damage sources, and it frickin' worked. But it's just interesting that with how many different functions everything quietly has in the background, you can get away with that stuff. It's kind of like switching everything's role mid-fight and kind of seeing how it works out.
Left-hand ammunition at 50%.
Ah, that's not a good sign. Yeah, if it wasn't for this water, this would certainly improve things. Like, I've tested other AC fights. It's annoying that so many of them take place in water, because it definitely makes manual firing that much harder. I mean, if this ends up taking a little bit of a minute, like, I know this is possible. I've done it, like, 3 times at this point, but, you know, whenever you start recording, stuff's gonna go a bit different. But we can always swap in the bazooka and go that way. But it's difficult because it's intended to be. Better there. Pro players shoot at ghosts. I mean, how many times has this guy been killed off for training? He's just here, you know? But yeah, no, this isn't even meant as a, oh, look, I can be super professional at this kind of thing. I guarantee you there's, like, somebody doing PvP right now that's just doing this in real time in PvP. But for me, it's just, personally, I've always really liked manual firing all of these, so after 3rd gen, you know. Ah, jeez. Yeah, you just got me real good there. Funny part is, like, as soon as you get a decent run going on this guy, you can get a pretty decent amount of his AP off. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, like, I know I've seen several folks mentioning that theoretically one of the scariest things in PvP right now would be essentially just manual fire shotguns. But nobody appears to be able to do that as of yet, or at least as far as I'm aware. And if you see those cases where I'm charging directly at him, by the way, you can cause a little bit of damage by just rocketing forward at somebody. You can become the bullet. But yeah, between the shot scatter, these arms being pretty awful at actually holding the frickin' gun, this guy darting around, this water eating about 1/3 of the area where he could potentially get hit, between armor ricochets and having that was entirely a controls issue. Wait, what? I mean, if you just want to sit there and get shot, that's fine by me, sir. There's a lot of ways that this can potentially go wrong. But that's what the challenge is all about. Consider it a meditative personal challenge, you know? one of the shots landed. The dangerous thing about that shoulder tackle, though, is that he oftentimes can spin around, because I think he is permanently hard-locked, which is why he misses so many of his shots. You know, I say as if my track record's any better right now. Predictive shooting is just mild psychosis. Fair enough.
Left-hand ammunition at 10%. Right-hand ammunition at 10%.
Sorry, I just noticed that the rifles were running out of ammo, so I figured whatever will make it dramatic. If somehow this ends up breaking his stagger, then we do it that way. By the way, just for fun, let me just go ahead and show you what happens if you try to do this with the starting rifles. So, starting rifles, I forget what exactly you have access to at this point. I think you might have access to the Curtis from the... Actually, that might be from quad training. I don't think we have access to the quads yet. But these things are basically half as powerful with, like, give or take 200 extra rounds. A little bit lighter, faster firing, but you can pretty much expect that he's never going to stand still for that. Meanwhile, the Ludlows are way the hell less powerful with about double the ammo, but also, you know, good luck frickin' hitting anything with this. The pistols, on the other hand, were probably the closest thing. So here, let me show one of the approaches that I tried here, which was shoulder tackling and then just doing this. In here, I thought the only soft lock was already difficult, or only with soft lock was already difficult. Oh yeah, no, it's a weird challenge for sure. So bear in mind, this particular way of doing it, like this here, theoretically very, very solid. Because you have a lot of potential DPS from both weapons, you have a lot of stagger buildup from the pistol, and additionally you have a lot of stagger that can happen from going and shoulder tackling this guy. But basically, in order to do this, you would need 3 rounds of perfectly hitting the guy with a shoulder tackle, while also landing every shot upon landing there. Like, if he just decides to stand still, great. But as you saw right there, even, like, right in his face, it just wouldn't be enough. But these shots are also way the hell slower, so it would be a lot more difficult to actually hit him with them, is the thing. As you can see, he's usually long gone by the time the shots actually get there. So that's why this particular one wasn't considered. In many cases, I tried running him into these props here, which do explode in some situations, but that was not particularly useful in this case. So anyways, I will just go ahead and let him finish the job here, because I want to show you one more thing with the bazooka. Because the bazooka, when you hit him with it, is really solid. But either way. Actually, we might as well just do it with the bazooka. Let's just do that. The problem is, you're kind of missing out on some of those prediction shots, but it is what it is. I personally found those rifles the most consistent, but as you can probably guess, I was at this for a decently long while. There was a very depressing week, and long story short, you know what? It just felt like a good time for challenge runs when I was testing all that. So this run is purely in, like, theoretically possible territory, but I think it's doable. So yeah. Anyway, let's go ahead and launch over in this direction. And yeah, the only reason we're using the MT frame for this, like I said, we're going to make an exception if there's a case where the booster and generator combo isn't enough to physically land a shot on something or whatever. Like, there's certain bosses that are just so dang fast that it seems like a possibility, but I think it's theoretically possible with just this. Anyway. So now we just go over here, and we can be all like, howdy, neighbor. And then the helicopter eats the shot, because of course it did. Yeah, you gotta be kind of careful with where those shots go, unfortunately. Alright. So, the reason that this combination is a little bit awkward is because you have the same old rifle predictive shots, but then you also have different you need a much wider range to be able to land the bazooka shots, which certainly do hit a lot harder, but as you can see, it leaves you stuck mid-air, which can potentially leave you not able to fire the rifle. And if you're thinking use dual bazookas, I can't yet because the frame can't support it. But it does take a decent chunk off him if you get him with those shots. So like this was sort of the backup plan approach here, and he decided not to go forward that time. What is that? Your job by definition too, man? Like, I know you're just a student, but pay attention. Any darn ways. Yeah, go figure. It's going to end up being the one that ends up doing the job here, isn't it? Fine. I will switch back to the other rifles, though. And that was just bad controlling on my part. We got to keep the, keep the dodges going while doing this other stuff. There's a lot to keep in mind. So... and you kind of just want to jump in the air and fire at his feet. If that sounds familiar to the old rocket run, old 3rd gen rocket runs, then it should. It's just, if his feet weren't in the dang water, this would be a lot easier. That's a missile. Nope, nope, nope. Stop tracking me. Alright. Pretty sure your mouse cord is the culprit? What do you mean the mouse cord is the culprit? I have a wireless mouse. What, is the sound all better now? Yeah, the cord in question was the mic cord directly. Ah, that was just a misplay on my part. Instead of boosting, I hit the wrong button. What's the problem with the water? So, every time you fire a shot, it has a chance to scatter. And so basically it'll go up or down a little bit. Now, in most situations, that wouldn't necessarily be a problem, because it still has a chance to hit their feet. Plus, the shots go a little bit higher than where it actually shows on the prediction thingy. So anyways, it normally wouldn't be too much of a problem because you'd be using your FCS and it would correct for all that. But anyways, being on the water means that you actually end up seeing part of your shot disappear into the water. So if, for example, it would have tapped him on the toe, it instead just becomes a complete dud shot. It's just bad aim on my part because that should have hit him directly. And it's a lot harder to aim this in real time than it seems. Anyway. Could be better, could be worse. But this is why I liked using primarily the rifles, because using 2 rifle shots, you can eat away at his AP pretty consistently, and you can stick with the same firing line instead of constantly switching between the two to accommodate for the bazooka shots. Easier to predict one thing than 2. Is probably the best way to put it. Because a lot of this is, again, prediction shotting. It's like, then keep the mouse away from the headset cord, that or the receiver is messing with the headset. Are you saying that right? Like, is it back or is it not? What are you saying there? Because the two are nowhere near each other. Chatter's always louder when you're messing with your mouse. I'm not messing with my mouse. I'm not even touching my mouse. Actually, then it would be the problem with this cord right here. Then it would be the dock cord. Hang on, let me adjust something real quick. Because this is all controller. I'm not doing anything on mouse right now. Yeah, let me know if that fixes it. This will not be the attempt, and I think I want to go back to my rifles. The bazookas are just extra risky. Like, maybe once we get the bigger grenade cannons and stuff, it might be more worthwhile. Like, you basically gotta hit him right dead on with the thing to get the effect. I mean, on the plus side, they don't deflect at all. Shatter comes back when you stop to adjust something. Weird. At the very least, we got him there. And if you're thinking, by the way, wait for him to do his blade wind-up and then hit him with the bazooka, it actually isn't enough to stagger him out of it, believe it or not. Like, his frame is so freaking heavy that, that it just won't do the trick. Nah, thought I would get him on the boost there. This one's toast. Alright, just do what you gotta do.
Did I do it?
Yeah, I've been suspecting that the dock I use with my with the deck here might be potentially the problem. Maybe not though. I don't know for sure. I don't know. Anyway, let's go back to the frickety rifles here. As nice as it would be to get a free shot right off the very start, it honestly isn't too much better than this right here. Because believe it or not, even with full damage there, it's essentially 4 rifle shots is the equivalent of this bazooka, give or take. It does a lot of impact damage, but it's not really going to be the end of the world when we can get 4 more consistent shots with these rifles here. But well. Hang on. What the hell time is it?
Main system activating.
I want to make sure I'm not taking too long on this. Quick little pause here. What is this? Okay, we got a minute. Perfect. Let's continue on. And yeah, a burst shot from the rifle is more or less equivalent to the bazooka shot, give or take. It's not, like, exactly one-to-one, but it's close enough that I just prefer these. Like, in general, they're just really reliable for this kind of challenge. It's pretty much, like, what they were built for, I feel. Because they're very, very accurate. And every time you see a marksman character in the story, they're always running one of these for good reason. The bazooka shot, it appears to have a little bit of extra kind of like area detonation, so I believe what happens is that helicopter technically has a health bar, so I think it automatically detonates itself next to the helicopter, but anyway.
Must be the locals. No, it's an independent.
Independent of the ability to aim.
It's just a trainee on delivery duty, but don't let your guard down.
What is guard, and how do I have some?
I'll deal with the Merc. I've been training for this.
Yeah, this MT frame is really something. Like, the funny part is, even the difference in AP between, like, the lightest frickin' frames that you can get would be pretty convenient next to this stupid thing. Like, realistically, that first attempt probably would have been a success in even the starting frame. But it's the fact this thing has no AP or armor or stability or weight capacity. It is built to fail in every possible every possible way. But I do love when they do that kind of stuff, and they're like, here you go, here's this thing that's absolute trash, win the game with it. It's like, yes, I feel like I will. Yeah, right there in old gen, that probably would have been a hit because those shots sailed right over his head. It is a very satisfying ping when it hits, though. Reminds me of the like Garand ping, you know. Tings. There we go. I like those tings. Manual reload. Fast reload speed on these things. There we are. Just feeling a bit more cozy right now. But yeah, you see what I mean about how similar these feel to the old gen rockets, though. Like, whenever manual firing, like, their shot speed, their overall trajectory and everything just feels very similar. Okay, there goes 1,000 AP to those missiles. See, isn't the Rensetsu easier than the Oh, the Harris? I don't know if the Harris is actually even unlocked at this point. I mean, if you wouldn't mind checking. This was first shop unlock. I believe it's the next one that unlocks the Harris. Like, yeah, theoretically, the Harris would be better for this. I mean, it has less of a consistent firing rate, which is, again, another one of the nice benefits of this thing. But yeah, if anybody wouldn't mind double-checking that, wouldn't say no.
Keeping up is real work. My training is paying off.
More so your armor value, but alright. Not a lot? It's not unlocked yet? Okay. Yeah, if it was possible to do manual fire, like, right from the get-go, I would. Didn't know you were doing this as if it were a new player. Yeah, no, otherwise I would be using, like, the frickin', the second one. Whatever that one is that you pick up from the depths mission. That was the linear rifle I ended up sticking with for probably my favorite AC.
AP at 30%.
But yeah, no, I'm trying to vaguely... so for weapon unlocks, I'm sticking with whatever's appropriate for the time, and then for the frame, I have to stick with the MT frame, and then for for the generators and like inside parts and whatever else, if there's no way to keep up with some of the bosses later, then that's like a strict maybe. But for the most part, like, I've really liked these rifles almost all games, so they're definitely strong enough to make it happen. It's just, oh boy. It's just a matter of figuring it out. Like, linear rifles in general probably would be pretty cozy for this part, just because they might have a longer overall range. But these ones have a better fire rate, and that's pretty useful in its own way. Like, it manages to still keep the accuracy of all the other kind of sharpshooting rifles, but at the same time, it isn't. You're not missing out on as many shot opportunities. Plus, they have more ammo. The main issue that comes is from being able to pull off these shots while dodging these frickin' missiles constantly. Like, I can already tell you with Sula, it ends up being a decent bit easier, just strictly due to the fact that you can stay at a consistent range without having to constantly circle, you know? It's like anybody with missiles is going to be a problem. Especially if it's these slow missiles that you gotta, you know, wait to show up by mail order and then go there. See, the Rensetsu is great, but those arms no recoil. You can't really rapid fire. Well, that's the thing. They can recover before anything else. They can't really rapid fire anyway. Like, that's about the extent that you can rapid fire. Like, I can do the other rapid fire, but it's that exact thing right there happens, where I just immediately get hit by missiles, so... Like, this is as rapid as it gets. And don't get me wrong, I realize how stupid this run is. That's the point. Like, this is by no means going to be an instant win by any measure here. I just want to get really good at manual firing and, do this stupid fun challenge run. Doing one after the other is acceptable enough for recoil. Like, you can do one after the other to do like a pop, like a little pop shooter kind of thing. It's still better than the starting rifles in terms of recoil, but...
AP at 50%.
But yeah, it's those stupid missiles that make this such a challenge. And again, another reason that I don't like using bazookas for this part. Because even if I could use dual bazookas, Just would never be able to get away with firing both of them. Just can't wait till this becomes the norm for PvP somehow. And you just know it's going to start in Japan. It's connected. Oh. Alright, is stream back on then? If anyone could confirm if that disconnection affected y'all.
AP at 30%. No repair kits remaining.
Bad Cook is forbidden. I mean, Bad Cook is going to be a way down the line. Not to mention, I can't imagine Bad Cook would be particularly handy for stuff like Ibis or whatever. I'm not forbidding that. I'll also, hell, I don't even know how heavy those things are. There's a pretty decent chance this frame can't even use them. So, like, we're a long time from worrying about Bad Cooks. Also, as far as Carla goes, that won't be an issue in this run. See, one of those things that I really hope to see from this game, especially in DLC down the road, is the option to let the red gun survive. Now, the next best thing is to basically eliminate the universe for not letting G1 live. So, basically, this guy is just going to be one of the MTs that managed to survive, that whole G1 situation in order to reset the universe from scratch. I don't know. Long story short, I prefer the destruction ending. Just in general, like, thematically and everything else, it just feels more like the correct choice in my book between the three endings. I'm just like, if you got your sentient brain worms, like, are you going to submit to that? No, screw that. Are you going to become a robot forever? That sounds terrible. Burn it all so we don't have to worry about any of these outcomes because sentient frickin' batteries are horrific? Yes. That is exactly what we're doing. Also, I think the mailman just showed up. Oh man, that was really impressive there for a second. I love that ting sound. See, Bad Cook is one of the heaviest? Yeah. Yeah, but these rifles are consistent. This will do the job. I've done it before. I know it can be done. Like I said, this is like the third time I'm doing this. It's just every time that I start recording it. Originally, this was going to be videos, and then ended up running into technical issues there, and so I figured, screw it. Just do it this way.
Right-hand ammunition at 10%.
Can see the struggles in real time. And just to reiterate this, I have tried punches before.
Left-hand ammunition at
Like, if he could be run out of missiles, that'd be a different story, but NPCs apparently don't get ammo counts. I'm assuming they specifically made it that way so that you couldn't do it. Plus, error hits you right in the feels. Zisa joins about to murder a student AC. I mean, we're consistently dying to this guy, to be fair. But this is, again, like I mentioned before, this is just the Onyx situation where this guy is specifically made to counter the really stupid thing that we're doing right now. Like, they specifically don't even let you have manual fire by this point because it would just screw you over before you have the weapons to use it. So, like, if for example, we had linear rifles or whatever else, just to show this, like, if you had the Curtis or the Harris, like, I loved using the Harris. It was by far my favorite rifle throughout the game. I kept one from start to finish. The charge-up was really handy versus bosses and things like that. But the Rensetsus here are surprisingly good. Like, comparing all of them, they are surprisingly good. What on earth? Hang on. Dogs are up to something right here. Let's see, fire seems the least dickish ending. Yeah, like, to be honest, it's the least horrific in my eyes. To literally vaporize the entire frickin' solar system there. just to make none of the other endings happen. Anyway, hang on. Alrighty, and I'm back. Sorry, that took a little bit of a minute. Okay, so let's go ahead and first of all, I want to show something here. For those that are here that are thinking like, oh, you know, this is just going to be scooting side to side and sniping stuff. To give you an idea, spoilers obviously that are going to be coming up here for final missions and things. Let's see, was it this one or let's see. I believe it was this one right here. So this is the final mission that we're working towards. To give you an idea of what folks are talking about if you haven't seen it yet. Spoilers, I mean, considering it's an AC game, this should be obvious, but pretty much, I mean, most characters in the game and end up dying and or becoming bosses. That's just kind of how AC games typically go when they have the choice system. Like, hell, especially Last Raven, like, literally it's in the title of, like, the canonical ending to that game is that you've killed everyone. As they just pop out of the Dorito planet to go drop a spicy explosion over here. Anyway.
Main system activating combat mode.
Also, I just freaking love this theme, dude. Like, oh my goodness.
I will stop you and the siren.
Like, right now, I will settle for being able to land a shot.
Symbiosis, a shared life. I saw the potential for our future within you. You and I.
But the cool thing is, for a lot of the bosses having shields, that also makes them easier to hit for manual fire. But this is why I meant, if dodges actually physically become impossible, then we're going to have to figure that out when we get there. Which three endings do you like, Ace? Which of the endings? The destruction ending is my favorite by far.
Repair kit remaining.
Like, this is why I left the provision in there for being able to swap out for a different generator and stuff combo. Because obviously we will have more defense by the time we get here, and we will have other options. We will have other weapon options and whatever. But, like, being able to dodge the coral missiles and stuff like that, being able to actually land these shots consistently enough to even break her shield, let alone do any actual meaningful damage, it's like...
No repair kits remaining.
it's going to be a bit of a thing to puzzle out. Not to mention, this is by far my favorite boss theme, my favorite boss. Well, favorite final boss anyway.
AP active.
Like, the fact you've got this badass space battle going on in the background while you're doing all this. The themes, the everything about it. I mean, the Harris was key to my winning this the first time through. But yeah, just to give you an idea, that is the kind of frickin' slappage we're going to be dealing with by the end of this. So we got to get through the student first, but yeah, stuff gets intense. See, Fires of Raven being canon and the extinction of Coral, or possibly one could survive. Well, you already have the info that people can survive. That's the thing. They mentioned that everything kind of gets burned out or whatever else. But remember the intro to the game? Everyone also got burned out. You're basically just finishing off the job that the first one actually started. So yeah, it's definitely possible for people to survive, and everything outside of the system still survives just fine. Even the two companies, the PCA, all of that, all the human organizations and factions survive just fine. The RLF already survived one burnout. I'm sure they can survive a second. So, yeah. there's a lot of survival potential in that one, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the good ending. Because basically, obviously, complete spoilers at this point, but on one ending, you got everybody turning into sentient machines. Yeah, that, again, that's just horrific. Like, I was telling my kids a little while ago, like, one of the cool things about being human is if you just stub your toe or something, you know, you break your foot or whatever else, you will repair yourself, and it's all well and good. And so just imagine if you're a machine, you stubbed your toe, you now have to go replace your foot. But, unfortunately, the factory closed, and they no longer manufacture your foot. Wow, sure sucks. That sounds horrific. Like, oh, did you subscribe to, did you decide to end up being born into this frickin' Nintendo 64 body? That is a real shame. Nintendo stopped making those. Yeah. Sucks to be an old model. Well, anyway, delete.
I can't fail this mission.
Alright, there we go. But as you can see, we can technically tap fire this just well enough that it keeps up with these arms really well. So that's what we're going for. But yeah, the other ending is basically just putting off the inevitable for a little bit longer. So the Liberation ending, you know, comes with the most fanfare. It seems like the most heroic and everything else. But then think about it for a second. Like, okay, you know, the place gets all liberated and whatever else. The scrappy rebels win. Those companies still know that that stuff's in there. They are more aware than ever, and also there's the PCA that is more aware than ever that they would have to step things up, which would mean the whole thing would just escalate until the whole place is basically annihilated. Ultimately creating a situation that they would probably just go and nuke it all from orbit. Like, I would imagine the... You know, let's just go ahead and restart this one, because I keep eating missiles while talking. Either way, as far as the ending on that one goes, like, it basically would just result in PCA probably just deleting the entire situation years down the line. I've seen some folks arguing that, you know, evolving past humanity to become machines is the ultimate approach, but that's, again, according to the frickin' Windows 95 that decided to, to go and create that ending to begin with. Like, that's just what the AI decided, so at that point it's just like, would you like to give up humanity entirely for the purpose of listening to what your screensaver decided was better for everybody to do that month? Again, really cool ending, but it sounds like a total horror show in my eyes. Anyway.
I'll deal with the Merc. I've been training for this.
I saw there were some comments. I will get to that in just a sec.
I can't fail this mission.
Ooh, hang on. Should not be losing that much that early. Let's try again. Alright, let's see. Come to think of it, some AC vets either don't like or have mixed feelings on AC6. Some liked it, and some that liked it, or some who have loved or started from Gen 2. There's a lot of factors to that, though. Like, in some cases, some folks ended after the first playthroughs. They maybe didn't get the full experience. Maybe they didn't see a lot of the later mechanics popping up. In some cases, they wanted a very particular thing and didn't necessarily get their exact particular thing. But there's a lot of things that are basically stuff from older gen, but just improved on with this entry. And yeah, like, I would have loved to see a, you know, AI arena mode. I would have loved to see a first-person mode. I would have loved to see a hardcore mode. But again, just like always, the series has always done this thing where, like, they'll kind of piecemeal out mechanics to whatever suits the thing at that particular time. And in this case, that's exactly what happened. However, they also added some cool stuff from Souls there as well. Which, by the way, for those that were wondering about the Robo Estus, as I've heard it called, basically early on it's a bit of a crutch, but the AI also gets a chance to use it later, and it actually leads to some interesting situations when it comes to the AI actually being able to recover from pretty fatal positions and stuff like that. So, like, they'll pop pulse shields. They'll go and repair out of that, basically creating the situation where, you know, your Alpha Strike build needs to be able to actually make up, kind of prepare for backup plans, not just I showed up, I took one shot and left. Now, that's when I say backup plans, that doesn't mean that you can't Alpha Strike stuff. In fact, that's still one of those things that's super powerful in the later parts, especially when you're S rank and stuff. But you got to get more creative about it, is the thing. So, like, for example, I have that pulverizer build that I've shown off in a few videos. The idea is that it basically fires a bunch of lag missiles, then fires a bunch of missiles in the air, then hits something with with basically like a laser pile bunker, puts it into a stagger, then kicks it to extend the stagger, then all the missiles hit, and the idea is to basically completely bypass any healing or shields or whatever else in that particular way. Basically just going for the one shot in that particular direction. There's certainly cannon approaches, there's certain shotgun approaches or what have you. That's just the one that I prefer doing. But either way, every time a new game comes out, especially if it uses new systems, there's always going to be those people of, oh well, it's basically just this, and then scoff and walk away, and then go back to just completely ignoring learning anything new. It's been that way with every new game. Like, hell, the amount of new tech that ended up coming out when Resident Evil 4 got its remake, and there's just all those people like, well, I can't come up with an argument, it must have no soul, haha, I've done it. I had no argument, and now I've created one from thin air. Anyway, it's like, and I've heard the same thing mentioned about this one too. Like, have you considered you're maybe just unfamiliar with the thing rather than it's bad? Because that's oftentimes what ends up happening. It's like the difference between familiarity and actual badness is, a bit of a different story. Missiles are happening again. Anyway, I really love what they've done with this one. Like, this is literally just what I've wanted out of parts of Silent Line, Last Raven, and Daemon X Machina. Like, the whole, like, body horror story is what I thought Daemon X Machina was going to do when it first came out. I mean, the whole universe of AC is a frickin' horror show, and it really should be treated as such. But oftentimes it ends up not actually doing that. It's like, it's grim and everything, but oftentimes it doesn't necessarily get treated with the spookiness that it deserves. Yeah, I shouldn't have tried to go for damage there. Just a restart. Good old pile bunker killed them before they heal. Yep. Let's see, neither Rusty dies or survived at all-manned route, because O'Keefe said, see you on the other side, Rusty. Well, I think it's implied that he survives, though. Because thinking about it, like, okay, Rusty's route, he would end up fighting you. I mean, you do end up fighting him in that route. He gets his arm blown off, he goes and gets his new AC. But at that particular point, if I recall correctly, that's when they would have... isn't that when they would... I'm trying to think when the G1 mission is. Because, let's see, you wouldn't make it all the way to the bottom, so you should have already done the G1 mission. Because the big route split at the end happens right during Coral Convergence, so... in that case, he would have survived. Walter wouldn't have been there to kill him, so he wouldn't have gotten shot out of the sky, but he probably would have had his upgraded AC at that point. I think it's just implied that he's just kind of out there in the background.
We've got a read on the target.
Let's see, Daemon X was such a disappointment. Yeah, it's weird. Because if you don't kill G1, Rusty does it. Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. Like, the one way or another, he would be involved in a fight there, but he is, like, no matter what the route, he succeeds. That's what I was saying. If there was DLC, one of the DLCs that I want to see is the Red Guns route.
Must be the locals. No, it's an independent.
That pilot's just
The part where you killer assassinate O'Keefe, instructed by All Mind. Yeah. I love that speech that he gives, though.
I'll deal with the merc.
Like, you can tell during the fight that he's barely even trying. Like, dude's just checked out. He's like, man, this coffee-flavored powder and all this stuff sucks, but, but at least we're human, dang it. Also, I love that Freud, like, canonically one of the best pilots in this thing, isn't even augmented, he's just a dude. Actually, I think that's another reason that I really love the Destruction ending, that everything that Freud does, it's one of the only times that you encounter him, and, like, his boss basically tells him, like, no, I ordered you to leave. He's like, yes, I know. Just puts him on mute. Oh, it's such a good moment. There's so many great moments in this game. Like legit, if anybody was an older fan and was trying to say anything along the lines of they didn't try hard enough or something, like just immediate just unfollow for my opinion there. Like, this game does so much right in both as being a new introduction to the series as well as being a being an actual Armored Core game and whatever else. Like, there's just so many things that they previously had tried and didn't have the means to pull off before that they pulled off successfully here. Like the Ibis, I don't know if anyone remembers, the Ibis is from frickin' Silent Line. You literally have a bunch of sections from Silent Line in this game. Like, you have the bit where you're dodging helicopters for stealth. You have, like, spotlights and whatnot. You have bits where you're directly getting shot at from space satellites. You've got your 4 answer bosses. You've got your 5th gen movement and engine and stuff, which, like, it is finally optimized so it doesn't run like, frankly, dog shit. It's like, as much as I love Verdict Day, the game is just... I wish they would release it on PC, because even on emulator, it plays so badly. And it's just because of too many particle effects in that case. And here, they've gone and optimized the whole thing. They managed to make the physics of all of that, the physical chunkiness of all of it work, while also finally letting you move freeform again like you could in 3rd gen. The reason that you see many people complaining about the bosses and, you know, you gotta be hard-locked all the time is just because that's the way they're doing it. You can do all of them soft-locked. In many cases, I found it more convenient to do them soft-locked, because it gave you more situational awareness. Like, hard-lock is a way to do it, soft-lock is a way to do it. These are all ways to do it, and that's why I'm trying to do it manual fire, just because to show, you know, hell, you can even do it in this stupid rule set. People will try one thing and say that that's the only thing that worked. And I'm only extremely confident about that, because for months now, I've been arguing with people online over, like, oh, there's only one way to do the Tactics Ogre stuff. It's the only way, you guys. And then proceeded with, like, here you go, here's months of content worth of go screw yourself. Like, try something new and stop saying it's the only way to do it. Like, creativity is the name of the game, and it's gotten really popular in design, and I love that. That's why so many games now are actually effectively replacing older versions, because they've gone down this rabbit hole of really, really heavily emphasizing creativity, and I love that. Alright, I just ran to a rock or something. Just ended up stubbing my robo-toe. Interesting thing, by the way, if you aim at somebody and they dodge backwards, your shot will still hit, if you're wondering why I'm sometimes tracking them while they're going one direction and firing a shot that would otherwise miss. It's like, most of the time I'm trying to hit them on the curve, but in some cases the idea is for them to go the other direction. Like, if I'm expecting them to go another way. There's too many little micro corrections to explain it all, if that makes sense. So, a few more comments. We'll get to that in just a sec. And I can't wait to fight these guys not in the water. And if you're saying go take him over to the dry area there, won't work. There's not enough movement. He gets stuck on the walls. It's a bit harder to predict in that case. Big wide open areas allow for easier predictions.
AP at 50%. Right-hand ammunition at 50%.
Alright, let's see. Where were you? Killer assassinate O'Keefe, instructed by Almond. He's just really good in lore. Some AC vets don't like the bosses or the stagger mechanic. There's always been a stagger mechanic to some degree, because I've noticed many folks that were 5th gen fans are complaining that there's a stagger mechanic. It's like, this started in AC5. It literally was called Stagger in AC5. In this case, it at least has a different name. Each faction only has one prick pilot. I don't know if Z is a prick as much as just super naive. Had only one prick pilot. What's wrong with Freud? kind of acts like an asshole, but he's a fun asshole. Snail's the betrayal guy. As far as the red guns, I mean, technically 6 turns on you no matter what you do. Balta is also a bit of a dick. He ends up dying pretty much immediately, though. Air is a bit too naive to take seriously. They've played the rest of the series, right? It's like there's been naive characters throughout all of it. It's like not exactly anything particularly new. As I get stuck on something random again.
Repair kit remaining.
All right. Need to try to focus on this thing. I don't know why I just tried to shoot the missiles. That would be a cool thing. That's actually one thing that I wish that they had brought back from 4th gen. It was like being able to shoot missiles out of the air, but then miniguns would be like the go-to for everybody. Actually, it's funny how they did this whole thing where a lot of your parts specifically do more with less in this particular instance, because all of your stuff is basically just snuck onto this planet, more or less. You don't really have the ideal parts for any situation, which is why you see, for example, the PCA running flares, but you don't get them. You do get ECM guns later, though. Alright, that was a good little run of damage right there.
Left-hand ammunition at 30%.
And for those wondering about that little, like, tiny micro adjustment to avoid the water, I've adjusted the dead zones on my sticks multiple times to try and get that a little bit better, but it's just not a thing. There we go, that seems to be a good little run right there.
30%.
But yeah, certain spots we're going to be running the Javelin Alphas for sure. I mean, that's also super heavy, but probably like Javelin Alpha and handgun or something. That's going to be super handy. Funnily enough, speaking of Javelin being here, actually come to think of it, Javelin, how does it feel that one of the best manual fire weapons in the game is sharing the same name?
AP at 50%. No repair kits remaining.
Final one. See, like, I didn't see the entirety of that last comment because I'm trying to focus, but like one of the complaints that I saw that is valid on paper, but I would personally disagree with, would be like the bosses having more scripting, which, again, they started that in earlier gens. It's just something that they've liked doing more and more of. But that being said, you can still get them out of their phases, and again, they get them out of those phases more so than you could in 5th gen. So like the... if you remember in AC5, there was that one AC fight where the guy would basically die and then, decides to just come back to life, and then would come back and then come back on fire with a gigantic pole as their weapon. It was just a case where they would basically put you into a cutscene, and then, you got your new mode all of a sudden. This time around, the way that they did it, because it's all in real time, you can still get them out of those modes. So, like, one of the things I was showing even during my first attempts at Baltius there was that you could basically stun lock the guy out of his shield in many cases. He will still do his 50% shield eventually, but if you can continuously stagger him, he'll never get a chance. Not to mention, you can actually abuse that whole thing to potentially use it as a recovery thing. Like, they're not all as hard scripted as they seem. There are ways to knock him out of it.
Left-hand
And it's funny because the game even acknowledges this to an extent. Like, there's a entirely different dialogue from Rusty if you get past the... basically, if you use a lot of these stagger mechanics while fighting the Juggernaut to win the fight before he ever leaves, he actually compliments you on that. But, like, it adjusts for all of those weird situations. Alright, final shot.
Right hand ammunition depleted. AP at 50%.
Alright, yeah, we're just gonna have to get his missiles out of the way and charge here. Unfortunately, gotta hit him with a shoulder check first. Shoulder check gives a little bit of stagger, puts him into a better position here.
At 30%.
Gotta be during his blade cooldown. Yeah. That's why we don't do the punch approach. There's ways to do it better, but yeah. Let's see if Gen 4 noticed the Ice Worm is getting ganked by all corporations. Gen 4 would be like, it should have been me, or it should have been the bonus 4th path. Ice Worm is pretty easy. It's a fun little set piece. Like, there's always been set piece fights. Anytime I've heard complaints over the Ice Worm being too easy, it reminds me of the time you see the Leviathan and AC Nexus. Like, oh, here's this big dramatic fight with all this dramatic music, and oh, look, the thing has been turned into dust within seconds. Like, they're not even finished describing the thing, and you're already going home, you know? Like, it's always just, again, been part of the design. I'm a little bit surprised to hear some old-timers going about it that way. Alright.
We're under attack!
Alright.
Must be the locals.
So, do you like the Moonlight to be a default color or the purple one? I've liked the Laser Lance too much to give the slightest crap about the Moonlight. It is pretty weak, though, like, comparatively speaking, though it kind of makes sense. The Redshift one's pretty cool, though. Let's see, whole game is scripted, though, probably why it runs so well. It's not running a very deep simulation. I mean, it has a lot of factors that it considers. Like, don't get me wrong, some of the scripting I don't like, but for most of the scripting, it feels really darn on point in terms of making it feel very legit. Like, again, there's different behaviors from a lot of the NPCs depending on the stuff that you do, meaning that it is running a bit more in terms of all that stuff. Also, what do you mean it's not running a complex simulation? You see how much crap is going on at any given time? Every machine has its own stats, physics, mechanics. It's all interacting with the world in its own way. Stuff's exploding all over the place. There's plenty of simulation going on. Anyways.
Where to direct hit? It's time we wrap this up.
Anyways. Yeah, general rule of thumb, if it seems like it's shallow, look deeper. You're probably missing something. It's like every time you play through, it's like, oh, I couldn't do this thing. Well, did you try New Game Plus? Did you try Plus Plus? It's almost like they're trying to tell you a story here. Like, pretty much, by the time you finish NG++, like, most things have been pretty well explained and had a reason for being the way that they were. And then especially if you go for S ranks, alternate objectives and stuff like that, you get to see a lot more of what's going on. Should probably focus more on hitting this guy. Frickin' student pilot. Why is your AC so good? But yeah, if this guy was even like a mid-weight, he would have been toast 3 times over already.
My training is paying off.
But I do love how he's designed. Yeah, now as far as scripting, design, whatever else, Like, there are some elements from 5 that I was really appreciated, that I was kind of hoping would make a comeback here. Let's go dodge that. But I can pretty much more than likely tell you why a lot of them didn't. Like, okay, the whole scan mode, figuring out people's exact weapon ranges and things like that. All the weapon ranges of every single weapon have their same effective ranges and everything else, but they're less annoying than they were in 5th gen. So, for example, when I'm going and using these rifles, being a reasonable distance away, like right here, you can see right now I'm pretty far, that ricocheted. If I go and take a shot from right here, those shots would end up penetrating his armor. This guy's got some pretty thick armor, meaning that that drop-off happens sooner. So that whole modeling and calculation and whatever else is still going on. In 5th gen, it was honestly a bit too much, if we can be completely blunt about that, because there were a lot of cases where it's like, okay, you brought anything other than battle rifles, I hope you're happy with just your weapon being thoroughly ineffective in certain situations. Like, if, for example, you decided to build a thing without kinetic armor, like, if you... They specifically categorized your parts based on what one of the 3 armors you've got on hand, which was honestly kind of a scary thing right from the get-go. But this basically meant that, okay, you have somebody that uses thermal missiles, and oh, is their AC rounded? Okay, they are basically immune to thermal missiles. That's a real shame that those are the missiles you relied on, because you can only have one type of missiles. That's a shame. You just now don't have missiles for that fight, because they're going to deflect every time that they fire. Oh, did you like the... did you like to use machine guns? Well, that's a shame. Everybody's got high kinetic defense. Hope you like not using those. So, unless it was like Gatling guns or something. I mean, it's telling that most machine gun builds in 5th gen ended up just turning into the friggin' like quad barrel tank machine guns instead of anything smaller. Don't get me wrong. Again, I loved 5th gen, but I'm just saying that particular simulation aspect of it took it a bit too far, where you literally had a spreadsheet that would pop up when you scan somebody that would tell you the effective ranges of all of their weapons, their armor slopes, and it's like, Jesus, dude, this is... Why are we doing math when we're, just supposed to be playing this thing right now? Anyway. Let's see.
Left-hand ammunition at 50%.
I saw something about the setting. I haven't been able to read the full comment yet, but I know personally, like, my favorite setting would have been to see more of like an AC3 underground kind of situation, but I doubt that they ever would have made a comeback as well as the series has, going with that kind of setting. It's always been my personal favorite, but I know for a fact that they would love to do more impressive stuff at this point. More impressive stuff means that more people actually take a look at it. If you show a bunch of office interiors and whatnot, and just relatively okay but more or less cookie-cutter buildings in a corporate dystopia, that doesn't really look as cool as, all this frickin' awesomeness. Anyway, hold on, let's go dodge some missiles, dodge more missiles, and then read more comments. Let's see. See, melee charge boosts, or change, and gun shooting will be delayed if you're maneuvering hard. It's a very agile game simulation.
50%.
Or artful game simulation, not a real physics simulation. Yeah, and that's the thing. There's a ton of tech when it comes to all of those like cancellations and whatnot. Like when you see tiers of the weapon melee weapons and stuff like that, all of them are considering your ability to counter or move cancel and stuff like that. Like, how can you mid-air redirect? How do your properties change when going and using them for a dodge? Are you able to back out of it? And that kind of stuff is awesome. That's no accident. That's no lazy decision. Let's see. Dune Inspiration is just not the settings, but the part where you knew what's going to happen or foreseeing the future comes out differently. Huh? I'm not sure exactly what you're trying to say there. I'm assuming it's a keyboard issue or something. I don't know. Although I am running out of time here pretty soon, annoyingly. Like, that's also part of it, though. Like, as soon as there's the worm, there's the sand, there's the immediate thought of it has to be exactly like this other thing in some cases. Like, stuff can be inspired by or like the ideas of something without directly having to be like that other something. But every situation is going to be different.
AP at 30%.
I just don't want to spoil Dune.
No repair.
It has
kits remaining.
sand. The spoiling is done. I'm like, yeah, there's similar ideas there, and Dune's a classic, obviously. But either way, they have gone down this particular kind of exploration rabbit hole before, and they've basically looked at every apocalypse scenario with all of this stuff. Like,
30%.
in many ways, looking at third gen, like they were looking at a whole like closed-in, you know, they did the whole AI takeover thing since forever. They did the alien apocalypse thing in AC2, seemed to kind of immediately back off from that thing. From third gen, they seemed to like setting up this whole universe and then only to have it fall apart from, you know, old-timey machines or whatever. They did a similar approach for fifth gen, or sorry, for actually, yeah, from fifth gen. I think like fifth gen was probably my favorite overall ending to any of the games, even though I really didn't care for the setting that much. Just because they bring all these machines back, and it's implied that realistically you fought one of them for the final boss, but like they're just going to keep coming, and then it just switches over to the multiplayer. And then the multiplayer is just fighting all of these giga bosses with all of the other pilots, and then eventually everybody just goes down. It's just like, how does this setting end? It doesn't. It just keeps on going. And they tell you right in the ending, like, we have infinite amounts of these machines. We can keep this up forever. And they're like, well, I guess we'll just keep trying as long as we can then. Like, yeah, if you want a grim, dark ending, that was probably my favorite one of those. Like, the way that they handle the storytelling in this one, I really love more than most of the other stories throughout the series, where it's something different every time, and the way that they contextualize all of it is fascinating. Like, again, heavy on the spoilers here, but like when it comes to why exactly the people in question are being fought at the ending, like the fact that it's kind of implied that the mercenary support network in this case was doing the whole 9-ball thing, was predicting that all this stuff would happen, and so more or less was going and redirecting the story as you're playing through it, just like let you know, like, okay, you're about to get ambushed right here, just so you know. You should probably go ambush this guy over here. I've already seen how this goes, so, you know, you should go ambush him right here, and I'll make sure to keep you protected and stuff like that. And then you get to the very end of it, and basically just the AI had seen that they